Welcome to the Fleet Safety Geeks podcast, where we discuss the latest industry trends, best practices, and strategies for keeping your fleet and its drivers safe on the road. Whether you're a fleet manager, safety professional, or a driver yourself, our goal is to provide valuable insights and actionable tips to help you prevent accidents, protect lives, and promote a culture of safety within your organization. From vehicle maintenance and driver training to regulations and technology, we cover it all. Tune in every week as we explore the challenges and opportunities of fleet safety in today's fast-paced, ever-changing world. All right, we're back with another episode of Fleet Safety Geeks. I'm here with Phil Mosier as usual, and we have Bill Schenkel, Chief Executive Officer of NAFA. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Phil, things good with you?
It's doing great, Bob, and it's good to have Bill on in this episode. It's nice. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I actually sit on the board of NAFA as well, so I had an inside scoop and able to get Bill on this episode. So that's nice, but it's kind of exciting. One thing that is going to be kind of a stray from what we do is we're not really going to be talking about fleet safety the whole episode. We thought Bill could come on and talk what's going on with NAFA, maybe some of the recent changes. But I know Angry Phil might get on and talk a little bit about having fleet safety conversations within our industry at all fleet organization events. So, Phil, why don't you jump right in and get the fleet safety stuff out of the way, and then we can talk to Bill about some of the changes at NAFA.
So, yeah, Bill, just seriously, thank you for coming on. I know you're very busy, and especially with the reorg, which we're going to talk about, the regionalization of the chapters and such. But I just want to say this. So I've been involved with NAFA, I think, since 1993, so because I'm like really old. But I've been on a number of different committees, and one of them being the Fleet Safety Committee in NAFA. In fact, I was a chair at one point of the Fleet Safety Committee in NAFA. And I want to, maybe we can talk a little bit. I mean, I just like to see since NAFA is the largest fleet organization in the industry, I'd love to see like an emphasis placed on safety, considering the amount of crashes that have been occurring and the number of fatalities and injuries that are occurring as a result of those crashes. Listen, I know the hot topic right now are electric vehicles, right? And not too many years ago, it was alternative fuels, okay? And that got a lot of the time. But I want to make sure that the industry doesn't stray away from what I consider the most important topic, which is safety. Because, okay, EV, absolutely, very important. We're all aware of what's going on with that and, all the struggles with trying to get all that implemented. But 43,000 people died last year, right. and that's the highest it's been in, I think, 16 years. So I'm hoping that NAFA will, make sure that there's time spent on that as well, at the conference and even on the local level.
Right. Yeah, and I think to your point, there's a lot of value in what you said, and I think we need to focus on. So we have a session coming up, the Essentials of Fleet Management seminar, which we cover some of the elements of that in the risk portion of that and safety. But as we have to be careful to not just latch on. I know our members want to talk about EV. They want to talk about supply chain issues, technician shortages. Those are things that we hear our members talk about daily.
That's important, right?
So we try to address those, but we don't want to lose the fundamentals that really got us here and are going to be ongoing no matter what the hot topic is of the day.
Right.
So I think it's very important at NAFA that we maintain that. So I know we have safety sessions coming up at I&E. We have some other safety sessions built into some of our other programs.
Right.
And we'll talk about the regions, but hopefully we can build some of that out. We're actually in a strategic planning year for our board this year. So I would love to, when we talk about things that need to be included in our strategic plan as we move forward, see if there's a way we can kind of embed this safety as one of the fundamentals into that. So NAFA is more focused on always hitting the important topics where we can have the biggest impact. I mean, when you talk about saving human lives, obviously that's a huge impact. So, so I take your point and definitely hear it and think it is important and want to make sure we're not just always chasing the the new shiny thing, the EVs or alternative fuels, but how do we stay focused on the concrete kind of foundations of what make the industry great? And I think safety is an important one.
Yeah, and I know, and Bob and I have had this discussion on this podcast a number of times. So so we're the fleet safety geeks, and you're a fleet management organization, and it's fleet, right? So that's their main concern are the vehicles. So I get it that it's the EVs and the shortage of
Right.
people to work on the vehicles and the supply chain issues, and I understand all that. But Bob has made a point a number of times, like, well, I'm the fleet person. I just deal with the fleet.
Right.
Okay, but you deal with the drivers also who are driving those vehicles. So if it's not your job, make it your job. So Bob, I always love when you quote that. So I'm when you say that, so I'm going to quote you on that. I just think it is important. So I appreciate that, Bill, that NAFA isn't losing the focus on safety.
And I think there's more we can do. I mean, last year we held a fleet safety webinar, which I think you were part of, Phil.
I believe I was, yeah.
Some of the content. So I think that's something we, as we build in, we always have to, beyond just included some of the embedded content we have in our existing programs, how do we do specific safety type trainings? And right. I think, as we'll get through this today, I think there's some plans we have in place to help build that out.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great. So when Phil brought this up on a different episode, it made me think, and Bill, we were just talking about this before this podcast started, is like one thing my organization does, the company I work for, is before every meeting that we have, whether it's virtual, on Teams, or in person, we do a safety contact, right? Because that's just part of our culture. Safety is a big part of our organization. So even from the board of directors level, every time we meet, let's just start a meeting with a safety contact. Let's just constantly always think about it. And maybe, as we're doing some planning, how do we get that into the I&E educational? How do we get right. something online or, put something out there so that we remind our fleet managers who are managing vehicles also have a very, important, cargo inside there, which is the driver. And we right. do have a responsibility to keep those drivers safe. And that starts with the type of vehicle we buy, the safety rating it has, any kind of safety technology. But what we talk about a lot is making sure that, we have a safety policy in place, the driver follows it, the appropriate part of, safety training, so we can't lose sight of that as an organization. And right. if this podcast is reaching anybody, I hope that they all realize, right. How important that is. So I appreciate your support behind that. And it'll be interesting to see as we talk about the restructuring. I know that you were talking about maybe some ideas there, but I'm going to pull up the restructuring map for our new regions, if we're ready to move on to that.
Sure.
And it would be interesting to see, if you could explain how the regions work, how they're going to be supported, what's going to happen within the regions, and if there's any kind of guidance NAFA can give on the meetings and topics, and possibly even some safety topics.
Absolutely.
So let me pull this up,
sure.
And we'll have this for us all to see. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. It will all be out there for everyone to see the map that we're talking about. And if you don't watch it on YouTube, you can go to NAFA and NAFA's website and find this out there as well.
So,
all right, Bill.
So the regional format actually came up. So as everybody knows, NAFA had 33 chapters throughout North America, Canada, and the U.S. And over the last few years, NAFA has been making an effort to change it into more of a regional format. That's not to take away from the existing local engagement, which the chapters provided a lot of that value. But what we found is there wasn't necessarily an even experience among NAFA members, depending on where they were within North America. Some of them did not have a local chapter or a local chapter within a reasonable different distance. So they had to, it was a different experience that they had than somebody who had a successful chapter. And we had a lot of areas that were very well served, had some really great volunteers, really well-run chapters. So the regional structures was not necessarily to take away that local, and we're actually fairly confident we're going to maintain the local presence where we had strong local presence. But in the regional structure, NAFA as an organization can kind of provide some more guidance and direction to the regions and hopefully engage areas that weren't engaged in the past. We know we have members there that wanted to kind of step up and be part of this program. So what we essentially created was the 8 regions, which you can see on the map or go to the NAFA website to look at. But these regions were, we worked with a regional task force of members and chapter leaders and board members to really break this down by essentially a heat map of where our members are. And each of these regions is going to be run by a volunteer group, a regional council, which actually we have the call for regional council members open now and closing soon. But we've had a huge response to that. So we're very excited about that. We have great candidates for that. They'll be selected in the next month or so and start running these regions. And really the goal of this is that there's going to be a learning within the regions. So the regional councils can all work the plan and better collaborate within that region and see what there is to offer, as well as learn from each other. So if there was a really strong program in Florida in the Southeast, and that regional council can kind of bring that up to the board level, and the board can share that with somebody in the Northwest and say, is that something that we can duplicate up there and provide that same value? But how we talked about how we can also provide value is one thing NAFA is looking to do is providing essentially for lack of a better term, a course catalog. So within that, we talk about fleet safety. We'd love to have a fleet content that we can provide, that NAFA can kind of provide off the shelf. So if a region in North Dakota or Arizona or Arkansas wants to run this, we'll say, here's the outline for what this fleet safety program is. Here's some potential speakers in your region that have volunteered to do this, that have a passion and a knowledge of safety that they can present to. And you don't have to put together the program. It's almost a program in the box that we can provide to you. And fleet safety is one of those that we'd love to put in that program. We're putting that program in place now. So hopefully the regional councils can comment on those, say these are things we want to talk about, we can select from, and they'll be able to kind of pick that off the shelf, take that, and it also allows us to help volunteers so it doesn't become an overwhelming an overwhelming task to say, what do I need to do to create a program? We'll say, here's everything you need to do to create a program. NAFA staff will also get help to procure the venues. So we'll work with either, one of our members in the area who has a conference room that's saying, I'll volunteer that, or we'll work to get a contract at a local venue, whether that be a hotel or a convention center or some other, type of place. NAFA staff will take all that on. So we're trying to take the pressure off of the local volunteers, because our local volunteers have a lot of knowledge that they want to share. They know they can share. They know that's needed. To Phil's point, we need people talking about fleet safety. So we know that's out there. But it can be a pretty overwhelming task if anybody has volunteered for NAFA to say, start to finish, go figure this out and go run a program. So the whole idea of regions is that we learn the best of the best from what chapters did. We can take that. NAFA staff can take the heavy lift off the volunteers and let them do what they really want to do, engage and teach and spread knowledge around what makes the fleet industry better.
Yeah, that sounds great. One thing that, I was a chapter chair for many years because a lot of people didn't want to volunteer. And as to your point, it's probably because there was a lot of responsibility. Hopefully this can take some of the responsibility off, make it easier for, a leader of the region to do that. But my chapter was, at the time, the Michigan chapter. There was a Western Reserve chapter, which was pretty much Cleveland. And then there was the Tri-State chapter. The Michigan and Western Reserve merged to create the Great Lakes chapter. But then we still had the Tri-State chapter, which was most of Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. And then we had shared vendors. We had even one event that we did together. But it seemed like we were all doing the same thing right around the same area. So we just became an even larger chapter, which is pretty much everything in the blue except for Illinois and Wisconsin, to become the Heartland chapter. So I think it was said that NAFA kind of used that expansion of the chapters as a model to create the regions, which is great for where we are in that area, part of the Midwest. But I think it was creating some issues up in the Northeast where everybody is really densely populated together. And there was chapters literally across a river from each other.
Right.
that really it was too difficult to travel because of the bridges and the tolls and the timing and the traffic, so there's a little concern from some of the members there. Maybe it just doesn't work out the right way. But then again, to your point, we had North Dakota and South Dakota, and there's members there who weren't a part of anything and weren't getting served by any chapter and missing out on everything. So it makes sense to do this. Hopefully, there's going to be enough guidance and leadership from NAFA and the what'd you call them? The council,
the regional councils. Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll have all the education that they need to make sure that they can hold events that kind of serve all the different members within these regions.
Right.
Any feedback on that?
No, that's really our goal, is that we want to provide, the operating procedures for that council. Here's what you need to do, and let them come up with the ideas. And then we as staff can really operationalize it. So say, here's how we can do that and make that happen. And to your point about where there's really dense populations, our goal is that, so for instance, New Jersey and Philadelphia chapter are separated by a river in a lot of cases. They would still both have their events, but through the regional council can help coordinate it and talk to each other to say, all right, so should we do these back-to-back days, or are these, is it better to do, we'll do one month and you do one 2 months later, and change it up a little bit, because people that do want to travel, can go across to both of those. We also had a lot of the fleet suppliers over the years talk to us about, it's hard to get to all these chapter events because there wasn't coordination. So sometimes they had to pick or choose because there was 2 events on the same day, or 2 events within 2 days apart from each other, and they couldn't get to both. So that's also something that we're hoping to do. So the regional council can almost, help to collaborate and create new events, but also help the local groups, the local networking groups, which were formerly the chapters within that region, help plan to say, what's the best for our members? Is it 1 week straight of 5 events in a region, or is it, every 3 weeks, whatever that. So that's going to be different per region too, which is why we set this up. So each regional council is going to have some autonomy of how they do it, because we understand there's regional differences. There might even be regional content differences. So I know when we talked about this as we're building the regions, there's different types of fleets in some of these regions than there are in other regions. So they might want to do an educational content session, in North Dakota and South Dakota that might be drastically different than somebody in Texas, just based on the fleets, and say, hey, we have this issue with this type of fleet, or, the maintenance, some maintenance issues that are going to be different based on where they are. So we want to give the regional councils enough autonomy so they can kind of run their region as they see fit, but also structured enough so it's not everybody's basically running it the same way as far as operationalizing what they want to do. But as far as the content and the timing and when and how things are run, that'll be left to the councils to decide.
Bill, the one thing I've always said about NAFA is what makes it strong is the local presence. And it sounds like from with these regional councils that this is going to proceed. This is going to go well. I'm really glad to hear some of the things that you're saying here. So if we have regional council, it would be cool if we have members of that from various areas within that region, so that not all of this, and I'll just use Philadelphia because that's where I'm from. Okay, so not all the meetings are going to be in Philadelphia. Maybe we're going to have that out in Pittsburgh, or maybe we're going to have that down in Maryland, that type of thing. And the same thing with New Jersey, that we can have, and we can coordinate those meetings. Then I know that myself and a number of other let's say providers in the fleet industry, we would always say we do the holiday run, and that would be Philadelphia one day, New Jersey the next day, New England next day, New York the next day. So it would be 4 back-to-back meetings. But that was the only time, I think, during the year that all those chapters would actually coordinate their dates, so that it made it a little bit easier on the vendors and on the suppliers. So having this regionalized, I think, could be really beneficial. And like you said, also to get some of the areas that don't have that representation, they'll now have that representation, and they'll be able to put some strong meetings together, I think. So I'm really, really glad to hear you saying that, there's still going to be that local presence, because that is really fantastic with NAFA. I've always said over the years that that's what sets NAFA apart.
Yeah, that's really our goal, and it's going to give more people an opportunity to get involved and volunteer. So the regional council will be one level of this. We'll still have what we're calling local networking groups, which are going to need volunteers, which are essentially that chapter. But you've mentioned the representation on the regional council. Our goal is so each of the chapters within those regions, and each of those regions, how they're split up, have had multiple successful chapters in them. That was another reason why we selected them, so there wouldn't be a region that never had a successful chapter in it. They had successful chapters. Our goal is that we have representation from those chapters on the regional council too.
Excellent.
So you're going to have some people that have run successful chapters in those regions, and they're going to be part of this regional planning. And it's going to constantly evolve, but we do want to also, call out for, that point. And since we talked about Philadelphia, New Jersey, I mean, West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia's in there.
Right.
Our goal is that, the regional council will start talking and saying, there's nothing in West Virginia, for example. So we'll call out to our members in West Virginia. They'll work with some of the regional council and say, hey, we'd like to hold an event, in West Virginia on fleet safety. And it might not be as big of an event in Philadelphia, but if we can get 10 fleet managers in West Virginia that never got together before, that's part of what this regional structure is supposed to do.
It's worth that effort. Yep, absolutely. This sounds great. And I know there've been a lot of questions, so really appreciate you coming on here and clarifying even more. And I know you've been on the tour, Bill. I know you've been running and going to, because I did see you at some chapter meetings, and you're out there passing the word around. And so thanks again for taking the time to spend with us.
That's what I told Bob on the safe. That was when I worried about my safety at times. So that tied the safety theme into this. And I understand. I mean, I definitely understand that. I appreciate the passion. I mean, there was a lot of people that have been involved in chapters and felt that this was, something that was, and the same thing you just said, that this is going to take away a local presence. That was never the intent with this, although, and maybe that was early messaging, and we've tried to improve that messaging. But this is really around creating a one NAFA, but not taking away the local presence, but creating one NAFA that's a much more constant local presence and adding that NAFA into other areas that never had that local presence. Right. So we weren't getting rid of chapters. We were trying to build on the success of chapters.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah. Bill, maybe you can talk after I make a comment here about membership within NAFA and how well that's going right now post-COVID. But the passion that comes from these chapters is strong. That's how I got started in NAFA. That's how I got started in any kind of leadership within NAFA, and why I'm sitting on the board today. It started at the local chapter level. That was my networking group. Everybody in my region was kind of working on the same things. Anytime I had a question, I could reach out to them. For some people that go to the chapter meetings and now the regional meetings or involved within the regions, maybe they can't go to the national meeting in INE. They don't have the travel budget. They don't have the time. Maybe they're, just not able to do it with the type of fleet that they're running. And this is all they have. So it'll be nice that it's represented by National NAFA, supported by it. But I see that there's a lot of Canada on here too. Mm-hmm. So Canada does have members within NAFA. It's not just a United States organization. So that's kind of nice. But it's kind of hard to see somebody way up in that northern area. I don't think we have any fleets up there. But, being a part of Iowa, so it's kind of weird to see how big these regions go. But we do have a number of fleets in Canada, don't we, that participate with NAFA? Do you have a number?
We have right now. We're about 10% of our membership is Canadian membership.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And we had we had 3 existing chapters in Canada. So we had a Western Canadian chapter, an Ontario chapter, and a Quebec chapter that were all fairly active. So we're roughly a little over 300 members in Canada. So we definitely represent that, and we think there are some more opportunities to get people involved. And I know some of our Canadian members were talking, whereas maybe we can't, to your point, we can't necessarily take INE to Canada. But is there a way for, now that this is regionalized, for the regional councils and those groups in Canada to create a mini INE or some type of a conference type of there that they can build on for Canada? and look at that and say what's needed, how do we do that. So that's something we're looking at. In this regional structure, we're hoping that we can evolve and start serving some of the Canadian members. Not that we didn't serve them before, but is there ways for them even to build things up? And there's benefits that go beyond that, even too, from advocacy type of things. So Canadian members can now make us aware in areas of legislative changes, so we can update Canadian members about things like that. So those are all benefits that we're hoping to build on. But yeah, we have quite a few Canadian members, and again, a lot of those areas look really big, but there's not a lot of people there.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but let's keep talking about NAFA and its membership. COVID had a big hit on NAFA, didn't it? And certainly we couldn't meet at the INE conference. We tried the virtual, and there was some attendance there. But what did it do to membership, and how do we look today?
Sure. So for a while, so NAFA was around 3,000 members pre-COVID, and we took a huge hit in 2020, even 2021, as things built back. So we dropped down to almost 2,200 members. I think at our lowest, a little over 2,150. So we had lost almost a third of our membership. We are back now at just under 3,000. I think as of yesterday, we're at around 2,900. So we're just under 3,000 members back. We're seeing a lot of. We started what we're calling kind of an organizational membership. Doesn't mean there's a company membership, but it was a way for companies to get more people involved. So it's you sign up more people. There's some discounts of dues involved. And this end of last year and this year, we're seeing a lot more organizations come back and also signing up additional people as companies realize, as we talked about some labor shortage and thing. I think they're starting to they want to get more people involved in their organization that weren't the traditional NAFA members. So there's some people that we're seeing, from the finance side, operations side, more of even the maintenance technicians now getting signed up as NAFA membership, which is great. And they see that as a way to help keep them informed, trained, and a benefit for them to stay involved and engaged. So when we talked about earlier, it's great if NAFA can start getting content out there to all these groups, because there's some groups that weren't to traditional fleet managers, individuals weren't traditional fleet managers, and now signed up as NAFA members through their organization. So we're growing. We're definitely seeing it coming back. And now that, INE, we've held 2 INEs since COVID, although, one was kind of a late 2021, which was I'll say a hybrid COVID type of INE. And then last year we tried to get back, but again, it was right in just when things were getting back. But this year we're seeing some really good, registration numbers leading up to April this year in Baltimore. So between that and the membership growing, we feel pretty positive for where NAFA is going right now.
Oh, that's great. Well,
it was a dark time for a while.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
For it was really dark. Yes, a lot of people. It was dark, and we suffered it. We went through it, but it was. And Bob, you mentioned you were on the board, but I think it was good. It was a good time for NAFA to evaluate. So we didn't necessarily rest on our laurels and kind of say what does NAFA need to do to evolve and serve what will be the new fleet industry coming out. So I think that was an important time too.
Yeah. In fact, we had our strategic planning session canceled, and I think we did that virtual. I didn't have a place set up in my house at the time. I was in my son's bedroom. He was in one half doing online school, and I was in the other half. Yeah. And he had set up a little Lego scene for me. And every day that I worked there, it was a new scene. But that certainly wasn't the type of setting that I thought that we'd have for a strategic planning session. But we got through it, and it was. I thought it was very productive. It was a good way to do that. Everybody, uses Teams and Zoom now. So, we're very, very familiar with that. That was kind of the first time that I had done that outside of an organization that I worked for. So it was kind of neat to see how it's evolved and how we still rely on it heavily today. So that's good. But I still think in person is definitely more valuable than virtual. You don't get the same kind of networking. So I'm really glad INE's back, and I hope everybody has a chance to go to it. I went to the first one that was back. It was in Pittsburgh, I think. That was the hybrid one. Yeah. Not great attendance. I think there was a virtual one after it. I don't think it was at the same time. And I think that there was, members that chose to do that one. But Indianapolis was good, right? What was the last
Columbus
one?
was
Columbus.
Columbus. That's right. Yeah, yeah. Columbus. Oh yeah, I used to live there, and I gotta say, Columbus has grown. It's boomed. That was actually a really good INE.
Very good INE. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one. But looking forward to Baltimore, and hopefully other members can get out and do this one. Um, what else can we talk about? What else do you have to say about NAFA? Anything that there's our
I
members need
think
to know?
I think the one thing that we've seen, which has been great, because we built the online communities, which gives people a chance to engage. Because of we haven't had a chance to meet, and some of the committees didn't meet, and then so I mean the regional council we already talked about, that's going to get more people an opportunity to volunteer. We've seen a big uptick in volunteers. Things as simple as reviewing content for us. Is this still relevant? What do we need to update? So we're seeing more and more of our members stepping up to say, I want to volunteer. And in a lot of cases, we're calling it, terming it micro volunteering, which I hate to use like catchphrases, but
Right.
but people are more willing to say, hey, I'm if you give me you need me for 90 days to look at this content. And it's been great because we've engaged with, I've been at NAFA now 6 years. And I've, heard and talked to members that, I never spoke to before. So definitely the one thing I've found is over this time, we have more members that seem they're willing to give their time and expertise, which has been great. And, not even in long-term volunteer roles, but just, giving us some insights on things that help make NAFA better. So that's something we hope continues, and hope this regional council format and the regional NAFA helps to build some things out like that, and we can engage in even more people that we haven't heard from in the past. So that's exciting on my part when you start hearing from your members and they're saying, I want to give back. So that's been great.
If I can, Bill, anybody watching this, if you haven't volunteered for NAFA, volunteer. You'll get more out of it than you'll give. I'll just say that because I know I have. I gain, just the networking and all of that. But I mean, you just gain knowledge. And I've never seen an industry, and I've said this a million times also, I've never seen an industry where people are so willing to share. They're just helpful. So if you haven't volunteered yet for NAFA, you should, take the plunge.
Yeah. Yeah, Bill, you said it's a community, and it is a great community. A lot of great people do volunteer. A lot of opportunities. I'm sure you can, put anybody to use that reaches out to you and says, hey, can I do something to help out? I'm sure Tina could use it with any of the INE
Absolutely.
planning. Of course, I don't want anybody to get in her way either.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just opened up. So this is a request that came from. So we actually just opened up a writers pool. So we have our Fleet Solutions magazine, and the editorial committee they got together and they say, wouldn't it be great? And so we actually just open up if people are interested in writing, and we have editors to clean. So you don't even have to be we'll clean it up for you. But if you have ideas you want to write about, submit that as you want to be a writer, and we can leverage you that way. So, I mean, that could be as little as, an hour volunteer. But we're trying to do more and more of that to say, if you want to reach out, we'll find a place for you. We have stuff for you to do.
Cool.
Yeah, no, that's great. We'll get everybody on the Fleet Safety Geeks podcast and then tell them about NAFA, and we'll get them out there to help out.
Yeah, great. Sounds good.
All right. Well, we try and keep these to about half an hour. We're at the half-hour limit. I don't know if we have any closing comments or anything you want to add on, Phil. Or
Well, Bill, there's just one thing I know that you do live in Jersey, correct?
I live right over the border in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. So, so I got to ask where your NFL allegiance is.
So I'm more of a Philly person.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, then we will definitely then put this podcast out there because the Phillies or the Eagles are playing the Giants this weekend.
Yeah.
So if you had said Giants, Bill, this thing was going to get axed.
No. I've grown up. I've grown up a Philadelphia sports fan. So yeah, there's definitely
I knew I liked you for a reason, Bill.
Yes. No. I'm trying to be polite and not say there's a dislike for New York teams, but yeah.
No, well, listen. Yeah, we won't say anything about Dallas, so we'll just glaze right over that one.
Right, exactly. Yes.
I thought it was about to get ugly there.
No.
But Phil, I did see an NFL meme which I thought was funny, and it said, "In the NFL's infinite wisdom, they put the Phillies playoff game on a Saturday night."
or the Eagles playoff game on Saturday night at 8:15. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
the Eagles, right.
In Philadelphia, I'm sure there'll be no tailgating going on beforehand.
Yeah.
Please don't drive drunk. Okay, there's my safety message. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say Phillies, I didn't say the Eagles, but
Eagles,
it was funny that it's like, oh, just to give them 12 full hours of drinking before the game.
Yeah, because they're not loud, rowdy enough, you know.
Yeah, let's hope there's a lot of Ubers running that night.
Exactly.
All right. Well, with that, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time coming on the Fleet Safety Geeks podcast, talking about NAFA, its membership, and the new regions. I think that's going to be very helpful for some of our listeners. Feel free to support this and use this as a tool to get other people to be aware of it. And with that, have a great weekend, and thank you so much.
Thanks again, Bill. Take care.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
Bye.